Hey everybody, welcome to the Hack Show. It's Wednesday night once again, and I'm speechless. The guest I have today is just I don't know, man. It's just I'm over the moon. I am so thrilled to have him on. Gentleman's name is Mitch Weissman. If you know your Kiss history, you know about Mitch Weissman. Heavily involved with the band, but before that, heavily involved with a project called Beatlemania. He was around. He's been in the scene for a number of years. In the green room now, he was telling me all kinds of stories. You know, we should have started the show. We could have started the show 45 minutes ago. But anyways, without further ado, let me bring on Mitch. How are you, Mitch? Nice to see you, sir.
Fine. Nice to see you, too. Nice to see all of you out there. I'm assuming you're out there.
Yeah, we're out here. I guess you're not able to see the chat. There's a chat on your screen.
I can't actually. You're right. It's on my screen, but if I put it on, I won't see it. I'm watching it delayed on YouTube on my computer, so I can see some of the stuff that'll go by if it's there. But we'll see. I guess I can put the chat on, but when I've done that before, it bounces me out of the show. So I'm going to leave it off.
We don't want to risk that. If there's any notable things, I'll just forward it to you. So
definitely. Just to read them out loud, I'll answer questions, whatever people say. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, great. If anyone's got, there's Gene Schmidt. Hey, Gene, how are you? Quentin, Dan, New Jersey, Brian S., Rick Hefner, the Colonel is here, Alex Radford, White Bailey. We got lots of folks joining us.
Hi, guys. Nice to see you out there. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Russ Markart, Lars Guitars, everybody's popping in. We got 22 right now. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Half Face, welcome. So, man, there's a lot to talk about, Mitch. All right, let's start at the beginning, man. What got you interested in music? What was the spark that got you going, wanting you to play guitar and maybe eventually sing and perform? What was the spark for you?
It's funny. I mean, my upbringing was on Long Island, suburban Long Island. My dad was an attorney in New York. My mom was lighting designer for an interior designer. It's funny, she would do these model homes. Those like you'll see them in for those of you who don't know what a model home project looks like, think of Back to the Future when Marty crashes the DeLorean into that home area and it's just a bunch of new homes up there. Well, the designers who would lay out the model home would have to get their furniture from somewhere. And back in those days, it was usually their own family stuff. So my room left my lamps, my chest of drawers, my stuff went out into those homes a variety of times when I was like an 8-year-old kid. It was pretty funny. But my parents were doing pretty well. And we used to go into New York to see Broadway shows all the time. So I remember seeing Camelot with Robert Goulet and Julie Andrews and Richard Burton. I saw The Music Man with those original stars. I saw Bye Bye Birdie with all of those stars. I went to shows all the time. My mother actually signed me up for a thing at Lincoln Center called the Little Orchestra Society, which actually Leonard Bernstein used to conduct those things. And so there's a lot of culture in my house, including they bought all kinds of records. I listened to a lot of show tunes. I listened to a lot of Prokofiev. I listened to a lot of Alexander Nevsky, a lot of Le Sacre du Printemps, The Rites of Spring, Stravinsky, a lot of Broadway shows, a lot of instrumental music, including my dad, for some reason, had an album of Alatunji, Baba Alatunji music, and it had Jingo on it. It had all these songs that ended up on Santana's first record. And this was
Right.
years before. This was some of my favorite music, playing stuff around the house.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother used to bring over singles from the artists of the time. So I remember I think my first single ever was a Fabian single called Hound Dog Man. And by this point, Fabian was doing movies.
Right.
She also used to bring me, as the Beatles turned up, she would bring me Beatles singles. I had all the Beatles singles when she would come with Chocolate Cake from Brooklyn, along with Beatle records for me. So I grew up in a musical household, pretty much. Neither of which my father used to sing in a choir way back when. My mother could not sing. She liked to sing, but she could not sing.
Right.
I used to say, "Mom, stop singing." It was kind of, but it somehow I got the gene, and it must have come from somewhere else because I'm an adopted child, actually. But I was brought up in that household filled with music and musicals, and that got me going. And I think what started for me, I can't remember. Aside from having every Beatle album, I missed the Stones. You either could afford to buy Beatle records, not the Stones, whatever. But when I was in
Right.
junior high school, I started to buy a lot of different music. Um, and you'd watch Hullabaloo and you'd watch Shindig and all these shows on TV to see the other bands.
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking with Paul Stanley when we first were hanging out. We used to play the Beau Brummels at his apartment, and then we'd pick up guitars and play them and the Raspberries and stuff like that. So our musical taste kind of went back to the same things. He had a lot more soul in his background. Mine grew up later on because as a kid he went to the record shops in New York and collected a lot of stuff and things. My stuff was when I just went to the collect music in Great Neck, where I grew up. But that's where it started. My musical love came from that stuff.
Oh, cool, cool. And you picked up the guitar, and is that something that you were self-taught,
Yeah.
or you
Well,
took lessons, or
what was funny was, I mean, when the Beatles came out, I was actually born left-handed, but I was switched over in school to
Right.
war to. This was the early '60s, late '50s. So back then, if nobody remembers, being left-handed was a sign of the devil.
Yeah.
So, and teachers had a hard time teaching you if you had the pen or pencil in the wrong
In the
hand,
wrong
the
hand,
other
yeah.
hand. They call it the wrong hand, but the other hand.
Yeah.
So I learned to do stuff righty. I could only, but I still did things lefty. I could only get on my bicycle from the wrong side, reach over, put the kickstand down the other way. I could only bat left-handed. Eventually, I could bat right-handed. I could play golf in both directions, but that probably had to do with the ellipse, and I don't know how I discovered that because at 8 years old I wasn't playing golf. But later on, I could. But the Beatles, McCartney was a bass player, and little girls in the neighborhood, when they noticed my resemblance after the Ed Sullivan show, my wife hates it when I say this, but I thought to myself, God, I better start wearing turtlenecks and learn how to play bass. But I wore the turtlenecks, but I didn't know how to play bass. But when I mimicked them, the bands and the kids in the neighborhood played music. We would mime it in the basement at the house down the block, and I'd have my tennis racket, and I'd be strumming it lefty, which seemed normal to me, not because of McCartney. Eventually, my parents got me a guitar when I was 8 or 9 or 10, actually the Beatles were when I was 12. But when I was 9 or 10, I still used to strum the tennis racket the wrong way. But when I was not, actually maybe it was when they went to Mexico, they came back with some guitars for me, and they were right-handed. So I remember not really playing that well. But when the Beatles came out, and I tried to play bass, and I remember the song that convinced me to go to the guitar was I tried to play All My Lovin', with the walking bass line, and sing at the same time. And I went, forget it, I'm playing guitar. And I switched to guitar because you could play chords and sing over guitar.
Right.
It wasn't until years later that I was a singing lead guitarist, like in Hendrix or Clapton, and that sort of mode. And I was a guitar player before I joined Beatlemania. I didn't start playing bass until the show, when they said, would you play bass? And I said, I'll give it a shot. So I did. That's how that happened.
And that's crazy because we talked about this off air. I mean,
yeah.
That was a national search for cast members.
Yeah, definitely was.
Got the gig, not even playing the bass, to be Paul McCartney. Like, if you think about that, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, Yeah, it's crazy because you come in and you played songs, and you knew that if you're going to audition for the show, the important part, or audition for anything, you'd have to play an instrument. So you can't really accompany yourself on the bass. You could,
That's
if you're
true.
confident enough to do it, but most bass players can play guitar anyway. But when I did my audition, and I said I don't play bass at the moment. This was very odd to do this interview, by the way. I can see on the computer that the images are moving, but my phone has been frozen for the
No,
last like 5 minutes. So it's
you're
fine as
still,
long as
you're still
it's
okay,
working.
buddy. You're still fine.
I've seen myself a million times. I don't have to move, so but I can see that it's moving down below. So it's fine. I told them I'd learn, and they actually got me left-handed gear, lefty Hofner, and I tried to play lefty, but if I got tired, I just flipped the bass over from lefty to the other direction, and I played, did the stuff that way. And in rehearsals, if I got tired, I would end up going with the lefty bass, playing it righty, playing upside down.
Yeah,
I mean, talk about a brain warp. It was kind of crazy. But I had a right-handed Hofner as well. They got me a lefty Rickenbacker, and eventually, when the show opened in Boston, or the tryout, not the tryouts, I guess maybe it isn't, but the previews were in Boston. I played bass in both directions for a solid week, and not as well. The lefty shows weren't as fluid as the righty shows. So when I started playing righty shows, and the reviewers came in, and they basically said, once you get past the fact that he's not left-handed, the show is great. And that wasn't good enough for me to tell the producers I'm not playing lefty anymore.
Okay. I was going to ask you there that if they were going to be sticklers about, no, it's got to be authentic. You got to play left, but I guess not.
It was, but what happened was all the television reviews came, all the newspapers came, and they all gave me a pass by saying, the guy, thank you everybody out there, but the guy is so amazingly good and looks like him that you don't even, after a while, you don't notice that he's not lefty. So that was a nice thing to say. But it also meant that the show opened with a right-handed bass player, and it worked. There were people that jumped up. I remember the Circus Magazine critic Lou O'Neill. No, it wasn't Circus. It's up in Boston. One guy got up and went, "Oh, he's not left-handed," and walked right out in front of the first song. It was really great. He just threw his program down and stormed up the aisle. Lou O'Neill on the other hand, used to wonder why the songs ended exactly the same way every night. Why are all the songs 2 minutes and 36 seconds? And how come we can't see the lights on the amplifiers? And the sound, actually, we're playing low, so the sound and the surround sound that we had in those days, you felt like this can't be real. They must be playing the tapes. Well, the Vox amps were up on a raised stage. The lights were recessed in the top of the amp. And as I said to Lou one night with Paul Stanley, we're walking around talking to him. I said, Lou, the Beatles songs are 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Show me the Led Zeppelin style solo in Andrew Bird Can Sing, and the song can be 7 minutes long. But the song is the song. We weren't there to jam on the songs. We're playing them the way they perform. And I didn't understand about the sound quality because I was on stage all the time. But when we went to California, I watched David Leon, the second Lennon, the Lennon out in California. He was the alternate in the alternate cast. He was doing Come Together, and they had the slapback, and you had the back of the theater speakers. And when you saw him sing, it sounded so disjointed,
out of sync,
that you couldn't believe this guy was doing this live. And that's how I understood it to people. I went, oh, now I see what they're saying. It's almost like the lips are moving, but it's a little out of sync. But that's because of the delays, all the stuff like that. So it's kind of incredible. I could see how people thought it would be taped and how we might have been miming. There was only one mime period, and that was in the opening nights. Murray the K, God bless him, great DJ, was a big firm believer of vitamins and supplements, even back in 1977 or 76. 77 when we did the previews. On one of the opening nights in Boston, he fed me and Joey Pecorino a bunch of, I swear they're like horse pills, to the point where I think I damaged my throat swallowing them. And then we used to sing so much, I got laryngitis so terribly because it was a heavily Paul oriented song mix because he
Right.
had major hits. That's what they based it off of, the major playlists of the day.
Hmm.
That I couldn't sing for a few shows. Reed Kaling, the second McCartney, and also he was in song history. He was in Player until the album came out. Then he wasn't in Player anymore. Baby Come Back. He's got a few co-writes
Yeah, I
on that
know.
record.
Well, that's a great
Uh,
song.
yeah, but he didn't write that one. But he's got co-writes on that. Randy should have been in Player, but he wasn't. He was actually on the Saturday Morning Hardy Boys cartoon. He was the live action Frank Hardy, or the other Hardy. The other guy who was the live action Hardy brother was Donnie Dacus, who went on to play in Chicago after Terry Kath.
Mm.
They were the live action guys that morphed into the TV series. And he also was in Badfinger, one of the later versions of Badfinger, after the show was over. Reed was an amazing musician. But he came and sang the show for me from the back. I was out there miming, and he
Oh.
was watching us on video monitors singing. And then
Mm.
back in those days, if you weren't watching correctly, he started singing. He wasn't watching me. I wasn't anywhere near the mic. So he started singing, "When I'm home," and I had to run to the mic and start singing. So it was pretty funny. The people might have gotten, "What was that?" So I could see how people might have thought, for some different reasons, why the show was recorded. But there was like 4 or 5 shows where he had to sing for me because my voice was gone until
So
it came
for
back.
the younger folks, just to kind of put it in perspective now, I mean, this Beatlemania thing was huge.
It became a huge media sensation. This was the first show of its type that incorporated multimedia, screens flying in and out, different images, movies playing, backlighting, front scrims dropping down to the point where they could project on the front scrims, and we would literally disappear. I likened it to, it was great. We became the soundtrack because they would show the visuals the way they wanted to, and sometimes the band would disappear. And I loved the media effect of it. This was before the automated systems as well. So you had all the union guys backstage waiting for the lighting cues and waiting to fly in the scrims and all this other stuff as we sang. So it was really a unique opportunity way before all these theme musical Billy Joel show, all these different things that were on Broadway with just music. So, and then automated stuff, dance shows. And we had no dancing. Trust me, you didn't want to see us dance. So, but it was a great multimedia experience, and it may have been me that coined it in the interviews, the word rockumentary, because I said it was a great experience to show how the Beatles and the world influenced what they did in their writing, and how what the Beatles wrote and sang about influenced the events in the United States at the time, and that's what the visuals were based on: headlines, news, the Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King, all this stuff was in the show. It made it a much greater show about the events of the 60s and the Beatles music intertwining in the United States reactions, as opposed to the original version of the show. When we ran it in Boston, we rehearsed to entire Beatle footage, them running down the streets, all these different things with us being the Beatles, to the lawyers and the producers and the effects people going, you know what? Let's run with, for the sake of, and thank God they did, the multimedia cultural experience, and it turned out to be a huge hit. It just transformed Broadway and musical theater.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember advertisements for that when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh my God, I would kill to see this show.
There is a documentary done, and if people want to look it up, there's a YouTube channel called Wait in the Wings. My friend Brian produces all the shows on on that channel, and there was one, Forgotten Broadway. He has a series, and one is Beatlemania. And when he talks about how we revitalized Broadway, even I had no idea how much effect the show had on Broadway as an institution. So it's pretty cool.
And over time, as we were talking off air, you kind of started getting singled out a little bit from the cast. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I got the reviews. I was the most lookalike. And at the time, it was kind of weird to people. Oh my God, there's a guy that looks like that guy. And I used to get stopped in the streets. I used to get stopped on the subway. I would say, no, I'm not. This was the days before I wore my contacts. So I had prescription sunglasses. So behind those sunglasses, it was kind of people go like, oh my God. There were a couple of times Joe Pecorino and I went to Sam Goody's in Midtown from a break from the theater. And I remember a bunch of kids all of a sudden started running after us down the block. It was just like the scenes in A Hard Day's Night with the Beatles trying to escape. And we're in our regular clothes. We're not in the suits. Nothing, but the recognition of me was such that I got chased. I signed autographs as McCartney. There was a show that Rick Smith and I went down to at Max's Kansas City. We were watching actually Binky Phillips, great guitar player. He's got a Les Paul that Rick Derringer's Les Paul that Rick still wants back to these days. But Binky is a legendary figure in New York music. He had a band called The Planets. Hi, Binky, if you're out there, if you ever see this.
The Planets, that name.
Yeah, The Planets, exactly. Planets were around. They were playing downtown, and we went to see their show, and Rex Smith and I went, and we were in rehearsals in '76, so nobody knew who Rex was at all. He was still in his band. But I remember we're sitting at these long tables, like Italian restaurant tables, the ones at Max's, at the end of the stage, and these kids were going nuts because they thought I was it was Paul McCartney was with Rex, and he was very funny. He just went like this, and everybody's cut it out. Yes, it's him, but if you keep doing this, he's going to have to leave. So just what do you want to this? And they sent the pictures for me to sign, or they sent them napkins and things like that, or matchbooks, no pictures, but and so and I'm not letting them see me. I'm signing all the best, Paul McCartney. I actually, as a kid, I learned how to do their signatures off the photos that had the signatures on them and stuff like that.
Right.
So I could do all of their signatures. So I've signed Paul McCartney. I'll never forget when Beatlemania finally came out, I'm meeting fans at the stage door, and a girl says to me, "Hey, were you ever in the Village, Max Kansas City, and signed an autograph for Paul McCartney?" And I went, "Yeah, I did. It was the only way I could get out of things at the time." Which is when Rex Smith was there. She said, "I passed him a matchbook, and you signed it to my brother." I said, "He's going to kill me." I said, "Don't tell him. Just don't tell him."
Well, these things probably showing up on eBay now.
That would be funny if it did. That would be hysterical.
Yeah, Paul McCartney. He was at Max's
City, and he signed some autograph for my brother. So it was funny. So it's pretty wild. So I only did it at times to get out of the situation and leave. I never took it upon myself to. I mean, there were guys in New York that used to wear their sunglasses and looked a lot like Paul Stanley, but nobody knew what they looked like without their makeup. And one guy in New York used to sign his autograph because he looks a lot like Paul. But he would just go, "Okay, sign the autograph." You've heard those stories about the Kiss impersonators and stuff like that. And of course, they did it for really bad reasons, bilking money and things like that and stuff like that. But I mean, and I never signed. Yeah, the Peter Criss. Well, that Peter Criss guy ended up on Donahue, I think. I can't remember where it was, but there were guys who walk around signing autographs. So you get in someplace. I used to get into clubs because I was Mitch Weissman, not Paul McCartney. But it was pretty funny that the people would think you were him. I remember going to Windows on the World with my family for brunch or something at the restaurant at the very top of the towers, and I'm wearing my prescription sunglasses, tinted down, whatever it was, and my hair is cut like '76 McCartney. That's another story. I went to the Nassau Coliseum to see McCartney. My dad was the local 802 musician union lawyer. He scored me tickets for that tour, the Wings Over America tour.
Mm-hmm.
Went from the outside into the building, and all the cops and all the people at the station at their tables started straightening up, putting their hats on, waving, saluting. I'm walking in with my glasses on and my velour jacket and whatever, and I'm with my roommate Steve and our 2 dates for the evening, and I'm going, this is strange. And as I'm sitting in the stands halfway up, looking at the stage before the lights went down, people are waving. People, whatever it was, I'm waving. And the weirdest thing is seeing the police straighten themselves up and going, "Hi, good evening, sir." So I couldn't figure out what was going on when they opened up the show and he walked out and sang "Sitting in the Stands at the Sports Arena." My date for the evening looks at me, and Steve looks at me and goes, "Oh my God, you could have walked out on the stage and no one would have known it wasn't hymns. They all thought McCartney had walked into the Coliseum and they'd better straighten up and do their jobs.
That's
so
funny.
it was pretty funny. So there was a lot of.
They thought, like, why would he be watching the show? Shouldn't he be on the stage?
Well, that was the weird thing. But coming in, it was like, oh, the boss is here. Everybody straighten up. Start getting the programs in place. I mean, whatever. So it's pretty funny.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Paul a few times. So when did you? Because I know this. I mean, this. Well, let me tell the story. The story is, with your first association with Kiss was that Gene Simmons was doing a solo record back in '78, right, and he wanted John and Paul to be on the record. Right. For whatever reason, they couldn't, and then he thought, well, the next best thing is let me get the Beatlemania guys. But was there an association before that, or was that the sort of?
Yes. Yeah, we rehearsed at SIR Studios in Manhattan on 54th Street, right next to Studio 54. It's another story. We used to go to Studio 54 all the time. Steve and Ian would go, hey, come on in. So I was going to studio after rehearsals. Go get my wife, come back down, go to the studio. That's how I met Andy Warhol in the first place. But Paul and Gene and the guys were rehearsing for that tour I talked about in '76. And or it might have been early '77, I don't remember. But I do know that one day we used to meet everybody, Roberta Flack, whoever was rehearsing. I met Foreigner there. That's when Lou Gramm and I realized we had played a gig together, different bands, but we played at my father's place on Long Island. He was in his band Black Sheep before he was in Foreigner. I was in the band with Jimmy Crespo and Billy Hawker, and we were playing a New Year's gig, I think. It was Tower of Power, Black Sheep, and us. And I did a 3-song medley of free songs. And of course, Lou Gramm sounded like Paul Rodgers on steroids. And he remembered me. I remember we're rehearsing at SIR, and Foreigner comes in rehearsing for their first big tour. And they're in the back and they're watching. And when it was over, they came up to say hello. And Lou goes, I know you. I said, I know you. You're Lou Gramm, Lou Grammatico. He says it's Graham now. But yeah, it was funny. And I've remained friends with those guys for all these years. Ian McDonald is one of my closest friends. From Foreigner, and King Crimson before that. So that's how I met the guys. They came in one day, the doors open up, and in comes these 2 rock star looking guys. And we didn't know who they were, but we knew they were somebody. And it's Paul and Gene. Right. And they said, hi, I'm Gene Simmons, I'm Paul Stanley. So, oh, how are you guys? Nice to meet you. And it's like, holy crap, Kiss is in the room. And they took the song, let's play us some songs. We're big Beatle fans. I'm going, okay. And they sat down on the 2 stools in front of us. And they took the song list out, and they proceeded to tell us which songs to play. And we sang 4 hours worth of Beatles songs for them. Everything on that list they wanted us to sing, and they sat there on those stools. They're supposed to be rehearsing in Studio A. We were in Studio B, or the other way around. There's only 2 studios at SAR at the time. It's credited the owners of SAR credited our rehearsing and all the Beatlemania bands that rehearsed there, like 12 hours a day for years, with building all the other sound stages in New York, allowing them to get the loans and everything else to continue make their business even huger. But the thing is, they made us play all these songs. At the end of the day, it was kind of like, so what else do you want us to play? Because we're totally sung out. The comedy of it is Ace wasn't there at all, but the comedy of it is that Peter kept running in the door during them watching us in his blue Adidas tracksuit, jogging in place, going, hey, so we're going to rehearse yet? And Gene goes, no, Peter, not yet. The next time he came in, are we rehearsing yet? Paul going, no, Peter, not yet. So he comes in again, and both Gene and Paul turn back and go, no, Peter, not yet. The 4th time when he comes in, all of us in unison, the band, Gene and Paul, just without even looking to see, I mean, we saw it was Peter. Without even turning around, they just went, no, Peter, not yet. He started laughing. He runs out the door. The next day, after we played for them, Big John Hart comes in and says to us, the guys want to play for you. I'm going, absolutely. So we all go in there to watch them play. Right. And I think they started out with Detroit Rock City. I'm not quite sure. And they start playing. And they're putting on a show in a small room. And as they're playing, Ace's amp starts smoking. Now, we all knew about the smoking guitars, but his amp starts smoking, and then Gene pops a bass string, which is almost impossible to do. They were
yeah.
playing their equipment, driving their equipment so hard that the amp starts to catch on fire. Gene pops a bass string. The roadies and John escort us out of the room, and that was the end of playing for them. I heard from Ace for them playing for us. Ace told it years later that he told John Hardy, so he's in there. They got catering in the room, and he's eating sandwiches all day, wondering where the hell are these guys? I came all the way down here to rehearse, and they never even came to rehearsal because they were in the next room watching us.
Right.
When everything blew up, there was a restaurant downtown next to the not the Hard Rock. I can't remember the name. There was a big giant. There was the Lone Star Cafe with the big iguana on top of it in Manhattan. There was a place called Ashley's. The restaurateur was Ashley Pownell. He was English. He had a disco upstairs and a restaurant on the ground floor.
Right.
And I used to leave him messages. Speaking of McCartney and the signature stuff, I used to leave him messages as Paul coming in to visit. Sorry we missed you and stuff like that. And the next day when I would come in, he would say to me, "Look who came last night." And I let him go on for about a week like that until I told him, "No, they're all mine." He made me sign the autograph, and he said, "You bastard!" But we were. I was in there one night, having some dinner or having some drinks or whatever it was, and a woman comes up to me and she said, "Hi, you don't know me? You Mitch Weissman?" I go, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, you don't know me? I'm Lydia Chris, who's Peter's wife."
Peter's wife.
And
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, nice to meet you." He said, "I just want you to know, Peter and the guys, when you played for them and their gear blew up, they were mortified, absolutely mortified. They were horrendous because as far as they were concerned, the Beatles had played for them the day before and they wanted to play for you. And they were so embarrassed by it. And years later in 1981 or so, when Paul and I were at a party somewhere, I actually got to ask him that question. And he told me, and I don't think I asked Gene that when I started recording in 1978 on his solo album. But he's told me that over the years. So we were just, it was his word. We were mortified because you guys it was like the Beatles were playing for us and we couldn't play for you. So that's a cool story.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So there was already a relationship then.
Yeah. So coincidentally, he was recording at Cherokee Recorders off of Fairfax Avenue. I was living down Sunset Boulevard somewhere, and we were moving to Chicago. So we had the week or 2 weeks off while we were packing up things, getting ready to move and stuff like that. And I get a call from the press office. Carol Ross was their press agent.
Yeah.
I get a call from the press office called New York to the Beatlemania producers to find out how to get a hold of me and Joey. So they called me at home and said, "Gene Simmons wants you to be on a solo record." I'm going, "Oh, okay." And Joey and I got ourselves together to go down there. We walked in on the first day, and Carol's there. I think Sean Delaney was there. I'm not sure. The tracks were all recorded.
Sean produced it, so he probably was there.
Yeah, he might not have, because Gene did a lot of stuff independent, but the stuff. I think the stuff had already been done at the Manor, but these were the sessions to get all the. Actually, no, because he mixed it at the Manor. You're right. He could have been there. But my remembrance is walking in and saying hello and going out at the studio, and Phoebe Snow's in the corner. She had just finished up a vocal. Rick Nielsen is there because he had laid down guitar tracks. Joe Perry is there because he laid down guitar tracks.
Yeah.
Rick is playing ping pong with Joe with his picks. They're just hitting picks back and forth across the table. It was like a bizarre scene going like, wow, I'm in a room with all these people. I mean, I had known Joe, of course, before because Lieber Groves managed Aerosmith. I think that may have been the first time I met Rick. But then Eric Troyer was there, who was a great background singer and musician in his own right. He's been doing, and I think he still does, the orchestra, which was the offshoot of the ELO before ELO started touring again. Bev Bevan's the original drummer, and a lot of the players went out and they would do the Electric Light Orchestra songs fantastically. Glenn Burtnick actually was in that. Other players that people know. But Eric was singing backgrounds. Eric was part of a singing duo with Rory Dodd. Rory and Eric used to be on the Meatloaf records. They sang the backgrounds on Billy Joel's Uptown Girl and all these myriad of stuff in the 70s. Said these things that you would not imagine. They were the voices behind that, along with some other singers. But Eric and Joe and I sang the backgrounds on those 3 songs on the solo album. And eventually, Gene and I ended up singing the backgrounds on them when he took out the other voices, and we just gang vocals and sang backgrounds on Mr. Make Believe and stuff like that.
Yeah, he had some very Beatley song, Mr. Make Believe, See You Tonight.
See You Tonight was very Beatley. And the main vocal harmony on that song is Gene singing with himself. See You Tonight is all the ahs. That's me and him actually doing all the ahs.
Oh, cool.
So it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience.
Cool.
And that started the friendship. That started the first friendship.
Yeah. So you were hanging with these guys when, I guess, because you guys were all sort of part of that whole New York scene. So in their off time, were you guys running into each other at clubs and
we'd run into each other at clubs and stuff like that. But we weren't hanging out at the time. I didn't start to hang out with them really until the 80s. In 1981, I think it was, I was out of Beatlemania. I was figuring out what I wanted to do next. I'd gotten out of my contract with Lieber Krebs. I mentioned that before. 1 year they forgot to pick up my option, so I told them on January 1st, I'm out. This was 1981. Right. So there was a 4th of July party at Pepe Castro's townhouse. He didn't own the whole townhouse. We had an apartment on a couple of floors, and Pepe Castro was in the Blues Magoos, and then in Balance, and a variety of stuff. And of course, I think he's on Destroyers, on one of those. He's Unmasked, maybe. He's got some co-writes on there. Bob Kulick was on it. So Pepe had a party on the 4th of July, and my wife and I were there, and we were on the roof, and there's Paul Stanley, who I hadn't seen since 78 or so. Right. And we had a great time at the party, and we're talking all day and having a wonderful time, and he gives me his phone number. Says, call me. So as the story goes, I wake up the next morning, and I look at the piece of paper, and I am staring at it and going, I can't call this number. My wife goes, what's wrong with you? He said, call him. I said, I can't call him. It's Paul Stanley. I wasn't a huge Kiss freak. I wasn't anything like that. But you wake up the next day, you're going, I was starting to hang out with celebrities, sort of things like that. I mean, some of the parties later on, it's hysterical. It's like, okay, so pass me the salt, some famous guy. Jimmy Page, pass me my drink. So, but the thing is, back then, this was the first time I'm hobnobbing. I'm going like, right. I can't call that guy. So an entire year goes by. And it's the next year's 4th of July party at Pepe's apartment. And Paul's there, and we start talking again. He starts laughing. He says to me, hey, how come you never called me? And I told him the story. And he punches me in the shoulder and says, you idiots, don't do that. Call me. So I think his phone number, as those days, you had a private listing. Not many people had it. He still had the same phone number. Right. So I called him, and we started hanging out. We became friends, and at some time we played music together. Like I said, the Bo Brummel stuff, all those different things in the apartment. We started going out. Him and Gene and I started going out, or just Gene and I, or just Paul and I, and it was great. I mean, they didn't have a lot of friends they shared at that moment in time. And they became more polarized later on, but I stayed friends with them through that whole period. I wrote stuff with them which didn't end up on Creatures, didn't end up on stuff like that. And we remained friends through that period because, as Paul said in a Circus magazine article, or maybe a different magazine, you write with your friends, and the second you don't use anything that you're working on them, there goes the friendship. Mitch has been friends with us for years, and we turned him down on a variety of different projects. And and he remained friends with us. In this album, we got some good songs out of it. And I'll never forget that when they were doing Creatures, they're in, I think, either Wally Hyder's or the Hit Factory in LA, and they're supposed to come back to New York, and we were going to go for dinner again and stuff like that, either together or separately, Gene and my wife and him and his date, or whatever, Paul and me. And then I'm on the speakerphone. They've got me on the speaker in the studio, so they could see, everybody could hear the reaction. We're gonna have to tell Mitch we're not using any of his songs. And they told me we're not using any of the songs. And there was a little bit of a silence, and I went, okay, no, really, we're not using any of these songs. I went, okay, so when you come back on Tuesday, where are we going to dinner? And the reaction, they all start laughing hysterically. I'm going like, you know, I said, listen, it would be great. You know, we've been friends for a long time, you know, now, and we've played music. I'm happy to be friends with you guys. It would be nice if the stuff went on the album, but it's not. So where are we going to dinner on Tuesday? So, and they were just laughing. I remember Eric Carr telling me it was very surreal hearing that conversation, because you just took it in stride. I'm going, yeah. I mean, I have a lot of friends like that. Ian McDonald and I, we became friends years later. I was auditioning for his solo band, but we've been spending time together and getting to know each other. And then he told me, I'm not going to use you. And I said, fine. Because to me, it's really weird because nobody wants to be friends with you once you're not. I said, it would be nice if this worked out, but I like you as a friend. So why should we stop doing that?
Right.
And so I have a lot of music friends that, in their words, and you'll hear it in other celebrities' words, liked having me around. I guess hopefully because I was brought up nicely and I respect them as people and friends like that. But it wasn't about their celebrity. It was fun. As a matter of fact, sometimes, as I said, some of those things I would do with these people and be at Paul's Oscar party at his house when Christopher Walken comes walking in right after the Natalie Wood incident, and Bruce McGill from tons of movies, but Animal House, and all these people were all watching the Oscars together. And then 2 days later, friends of mine said, what did you do last night? And you say to yourself, I watch television. Yeah. You can't tell them what you've done because they're all going to think you're full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I even had one friend of mine tell me later on when the Kiss records came out, we all thought you were full of shit. I'm so sorry. I said, I know. You can't go, hey, guess what? No, never mind. You know, I watch TV. So, you know. Nothing. Didn't do anything because I had two different worlds, and I'm not to make anything less of your friends from your regular life, because a lot of them are still my friends from regular life.
Right.
You know, just because you're going into another thing. Some people have a hard time with that, and some people have a hard time leaving that life and not having that. But I mean, but I don't. And maybe it's because I had it. So, you know, I'm fairly well adjusted. I'm not fairly well off, but I'm better than most, and I'm enjoying myself. And this project, which brings us to when you get to it, the Buffalo Rock City project, is a great thing to be involved in.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Just before we get into the next thing, which leads directly to that.
Yeah.
So you hung around with Paul, and you hung around. If you got like a funny story with Paul, a funny story with Gene, and then the other thing I wanted, you know, kind of for you know the Kiss folk that are watching is like, how would you describe the two of them? You know, like not big, just you know, a couple words about the two of them and maybe their relationship. If you could sort of enlighten us a little bit.
At the time that I was with them, they're on a regular basis. I mean, when they were recording Animalize, I was at Right Track almost all the time, where people used to just wonder why is this guy here? And it was like a scene from a movie. And you have to remember, this is the 80s. I'm still doing Beatle gigs and have this mullet, like a horrible, I mean, the hair looked like this in the front, but it was way down in the back. And I got tired of cutting my hair into a Beatle haircut all the time. So I would stick it down the back of my shirt when I did the Beatle gigs, go like this. But for Act 2, I'd pull it out and there'd be this long hair sticking down behind me. And so I was there, so I was looking rather pop starish, black, but this was the leg warmer days, so I had leg warmers, and it's this weird combination of stuff. I remember auditioning for Billy Squire's band. Gene lent me one of his Padula basses to audition for it, and Billy, it's another project which I didn't get hired by the band, but Billy and I stayed friends forever. He was the best man at my second wedding in 1989. We still talk occasionally.
Cool.
But so I was hanging out with a lot of different people. But Gene and Paul in those days were friends, and still friends. But we had separate sort of things that we did together. There was a funny story about Paul when in hindsight, it's actually out of historical content because the story with Gene is funnier before that. But Paul and I, when I broke up with my first wife, Paul said, "You need a vacation," and he flew me and him down to the St. James Club in Antigua, and we spent a guy's long weekend there. We had a couple of Swedish girls as accompaniment that we met down there. It was a nice time. He actually learned to water ski in 1 hour. He'd never water skied before.
Wow.
I couldn't get over the thought of what was in the water below us. He didn't, nothing feared him at all, stuff like that. I remember we're sitting there, we're in our 30s, and he's looking at me in the pool one day, and looking at my hair, he goes, "Do you have any gray hair at all?" I go, "No." He dunks me and holds me underwater to like try to get out. He says, "You bastard." So I've been dyeing my hair for years, but we had a lot of funny times together. We used to go out all the time in New York. We were sitting at tables and Christopher Walken would come over, or Robin Williams, all kinds of people would come over. We'd go over and say hi to Al Pacino and Robert Duvall. Those were the days when these would be bars. They're not even clubs. We spent a lot of time socializing that way. Gene and I, the same thing. We would go out and do different things. When they were recording, not Animalized, but when was Live Aid? Whatever they were recording and mastering then, we were at Electric Lady. And again, all of us hanging out. I'll never forget that Gene and I go down the street to go buy something, and guys across the street are yelling, "Yo, Paul, yo, Paul," and black guys going, "Yo, Paul, Paul," and Gene's going, "It's Gene, it's Gene." And I go, "Yo, Paul," and eventually it hit me. Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, say, video just come out. I said, "Gene, they think it's Paul. They think I'm Paul, not you. I'm Paul McCartney." He started laughing and dragged me back to the studio and tells the story to the other guys, and they're all laughing their heads off. But it was great. I'll never forget, we're watching Live Aid at the studio, and I didn't notice Paul slip out and end up there. I didn't even see him doing it. I was just in the waiting room listening to outtakes and listening to stuff and mixing and stuff like that, and watching the television. I wasn't at my house, so I'm going to watch Live Aid with Kiss in the next room, and the car is down the hall. So I had a fun life. A lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, watching TV with God. It's pretty funny. It's a riot. Yeah.
Yeah. So so this leads directly to the Buffalo Rock City thing. So you mentioned Animalize. You're in the studio with them with Animalize,
right.
And so what part did you play in the making of that record? Co-writes? Did you perform on the record?
What I did was the songs were picked. They were done. I told you off camera that Gene and Paul used to demo their stuff with Eric in different studios. If they were writing stuff more separate, if they were writing stuff together, you'll notice on those records you'll see it says Paul and John Beauvoir, Paul and Desmond Child, or me and Paul on Get All You Can Take, which apparently I understand my name was removed on one of the box sets, supposedly as an error, but I'm not sure because the checks came, but the name was taken off. So that tells you a little something in my mind about my relationship with Paul, which I don't know what I did, except probably just fell out of favor. I've been told by people that if you don't live up to the things that they thought you should be doing, and a lot of times it would be right, you were done with them. Although Gene and I have stayed friends since then, if we run into each other. But that time when Gene went off to do Runaway, so Paul was running the show along with Michael James Jackson and taking over the recordings and adding the overdubs. And I had my guitars apparently, to my knowledge, stayed on the 3 co-writes I did. While the City Sleeps, Get All You Can Take, and Murder in High Heels. When we were recording, Get All You Can Take was actually a very different song. It was almost in the All Hell's Breaking Loose vein. And the way I used to write stuff with them, Gene used to take all of Eric's drum tracks and record them and keep them on cassettes as drum drops, as drum tracks to write by. I've written a lot of my own songs to Eric Carr drums, very speeded up, very speeded down. So when I came up with this riff for it was the song in my mind was actually called "Only Fools and Englishmen are Out in the Midday Sun." Paul took the slow demo of mine, the half-beat demo of like all hell's breaking loose, or I Love It Loud, and he sped it up and created that whole "Get All You Can Take" thing, keeping my riffs and changing them enough so it became a totally different song. And I played the guitars on the demo version of it, and then when they were recording it right track, Paul was actually, his parents were visiting with his niece at the time. They were discussing a bunch of things on different days in the studio, and he said, "Play." So I'm playing guitar and came up with the turnaround on "Get Down, Fool Around," all that section like that. That's me, all my guitar playing and stuff. And even on "Get All You Can Take," the bass is my own song, and I didn't play the bass on that. I think I told you, but I don't remember playing the bass on it. I may have. That's the one thing I don't remember. Just remember the guitars. But Gene went off to do "Runaway," and then I had to play the bass on those songs. And I told you, "I'm Murder on High Heels." The riff is mine. The whole song is mine. When it came down to that part, apparently I played it wrong, and John Bavois had to punch in that part. How I got it wrong, I don't know. But from gestation to putting it on the record, I forgot how to play the song. So it's pretty crazy. But the guitars, that's me. And Paul overdubbed more on top of it, but he gave me that compliment. As I told you, he considered himself a very, very one of the world's best rhythm guitar players. But you go ahead and play. So that's a huge compliment. He left me on it. So it's fun. But I don't think I had it. What album was Heaven's on Fire on?
It was Animalize.
Yeah. The only thing I had to do with production on that song, and I guess I was a ghost producer because he did it himself. We go in one night to, it might have been Right Track, it might have been a different studio. He's going to do the lead vocals for Heaven's on Fire. And they put the stuff up in the can, and I'm in the control room. And he starts doing his warm-up exercises, which I used to call the yodeling, and he would laugh. And it was, he was doing them over and over and making his voice break to get to his upper head range on that exercise. And he was doing it before the track's running. He was doing it, warming up at the mic. The same way you go testing 1, 2, 3. He goes, just scream, whatever gets the shit out of your voice. And the tape starts rolling in the control room, and he can't hear it, but you hear Eric's click, 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 and the first chord comes in. Paul is yodeling, and unbeknownst to him, he ends up, and the chord comes in.
Right.
It was live. It was serendipitous. We almost started laughing. He just went, and he started singing the song, but it's not a splice. It was just him actually singing his warm-up exercises and ending on that note, and the song comes in. Just an amazing moment. No tape editing, no nothing. I'm telling you right now. He sang the song maybe 3 times, and he said, I think I told him to punch in one place only, and he said, "Should I do it again?" I said, "No, you're done." So if you call that producing a vocal, it was the easiest production job ever because I didn't have to tell him to do anything over again. He was that much of a natural. He was that much in control of his voice at that time. And you can hear it on those records. His singing is phenomenal.
Yeah. It's funny too, because that is such an integral part of the song. You take that out and it ain't that song anymore. It
just turns into a regular rock track. But that opening was just, it obviously was meant to happen, and it did, and I was there, and I can't believe it myself. So thanks God of whatever, the God of Thunder, I don't know, Gene had nothing to do with it. Yeah, but it was great. Yeah,
that's very cool. And was there any other writing collaboration other than that record?
There's other songs. There is What You See Is What You Get is a collaboration of mine and Gene's, which the demo is up online somewhere on YouTube. Written around the same period. It's Eric Carr's Lick It Up drum track. It's my vocals and Gene's vocals. It was me we did it in my little studio on 74th Street on a little Porta studio. The two of us are singing the backgrounds. What you see is what you get. And I'm singing all the other vocal parts. And for years, I thought it was just me, and people have attributed it to Gene Simmons' demo. But if you listen closely, he only comes in at the end on the outro of the song, singing the ad libs. Don't have to come, they don't have to look, they don't come any better. But all the other stuff is me doing him, teaching him how to sing the song. The original lyric on that song is about, we wrote it on some scrap paper I had at my house. It might have been at the back of an envelope that opened up into 11 and a half, 8.5, 11 paper. And Gene and I had very similar printing style. That same, the E with just the 3 lines through it. All the handwriting, I went to art school. Maybe I developed mine there. I don't know where he got his writing from. But except for the E, which he doesn't have a connector and then go like this, he just goes 1, 2, 3. The songwriting on that sheet and the lyrics, I wrote most of it and left holes for him to fill in, and he did. And you can see the difference of stuff. When it came time for that song to be used and considered for, I believe it was considered for Asylum, again, that song was there. He said, I can't take 50% of the publishing on this one. Or I said, yeah, you can. Because if I get 50% of the publishing and I get 50% of the writers, I'm going to make almost as much money as I made on Animalize. So, because they got my publishing, that's another story. It was a conversation Paul and I had off the record, and I lived up to it when the album came out. The album came out, sold 1.7 million copies, and there was no publishing deal. There was no contract with me signed yet. But I remembered our conversation, which was, unless we talked about it and worked it out beforehand, we get the publishing on the first stuff you work with us. And I gave it to them. But that sort of album selling, I did very well. I only wish one of those songs had been a radio song. And Get All You Can Take would have been a radio song, but Paul is the one who decided to sing What Fucking Difference Does It Make?
Yeah.
Because we couldn't come up with a lyric. That story is amazing as well. Paul and I are at his apartment he had an apartment on 50-something Street by the East River. Tom Snyder was in the elevator. We'd see him in the elevator, say hello and stuff like that. Bob Kulick lived in it for a while. When the New York State people found out he had that apartment he was renting still and owned his place on Madison Avenue, he had to give it up. There are certain states that you can't have more than 2 residences in a city. So he lost that apartment. But we're in there, and I'm on the phone in the bathroom, big long coily cord and stuff like that, walking out into the living room. He's on the phone in the living room talking to Gene, and we're trying to come up with the lyrics, and we keep singing everything. I can't even remember half the stuff we came up with, all these nonsense lyrics or stuff that wasn't good, and we couldn't figure out the lyric to that one line. I mean, the lyric, Paul and I had written all the other lyrics, but where, you got to get all you can take, it's stop waiting for your lucky break, blank, 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 blank. You got to get all you can take. We just couldn't come up with it. And we're shooting shit back and forth. We hang up the phone. The next day, Paul calls and says, I got it. What fucking difference does it make? And, that song was during the Tipper Gore song advisory things on the albums and stuff. As a matter of fact, Paul said that's what we're putting in there. So it killed the radio play. And now, Alanis Morris said, you hear those songs, it's, the cursing's in there. It killed Walmart for them. Walmart wouldn't carry the album. I can't remember what was the line that ended up in the printing. You got to get all you can take. Whatever it is, they actually had to come up with some line to put on the liner notes. Yeah, so they got through it. Yeah,
I remember hearing that as a kid when I bought the record. I'm like, wait a minute, is Paul?
Yeah, they just cursed. Yeah, exactly.
What?
It was great. It was great. Yeah.
Wow. I was like, wow.
I'd like to say I was the guy that said you should just curse, but no, it wasn't me. I was trying to think of anything else but that. But he said, nope, we're going with this, and I admire him for it. Yep.
So this takes us to Buffalo Rock City.
Yeah, years later, after all the stuff in between. As you said, I mean, I've had fans and friends and stuff in the KISS camp for years. It's always been something that comes up. And as you said, with me writing for Animalize, and actually with Greg Prato, if you haven't had Greg on your show, you should. The writer who wrote the KISS Unmasked book that came out 2 years ago. I mean, I'm in there all over the place. And that got me people thinking about me again and stuff. And I was actually going to think of doing some conventions, but COVID kind of killed it for everybody. Bruce Kulick actually said, you should do the conventions. He's the one who actually was behind that. Yeah.
I'll tell you something about the conventions. So I mean, there used to be in Toronto, man, all through the 90s, they had conventions every year. They stopped, but it was through the conventions that I got to meet Sean Delaney, Bill Coyne, Bruce Kulick multiple times. Actually, Mark St. John, who was on the Animalized record,
Yeah.
like Karabi, like you name it, all these folks. It was through Vinnie Vincent, Peter
Yep.
Criss, all of them. So, and for Kiss nerds like me, the name Mitch Weissman carries a lot of weight. So you would be a definite guy that, yeah, Bruce is right. You should, if you have the opportunity, you should get in on
Yeah,
that.
well, I don't plan on checking out anytime soon, and all and actually the reaction to this song and on this project, which we'll get to, has been very, very favorable, and it goes to my line of thinking. I have a friend named Ender Harris. Ender Harris worked with Gene and more specifically his son years ago in the comics sort of convention stuff like that. I actually did a song "Remember Me" on Ace Frehley tribute album with me and Richie
Right.
Scarlett and John Ostrowski.
Mm.
On that, Doug Snay's a little horrifying thing, but actually, I'll let you in a little secret. The rights reverted back to Ender this year, so we may be seeing a re-release of that. Dimebag's on there. Everybody's on that record. So
Cool.
I'm doing Remember Me. So Ender and I stayed friends. I ran into him later on, but later on when I was trying to think of something to do, the idea of doing a book finally came up. Craig Prato is the one who wanted me to. Prato wanted me to write a book, and he actually gave me an outline for it, which I still have, Greg, and I thank you very much. But I don't seem to have a minute's time to start woodshedding or finding something to talk into and start telling stories. I need an editor. Unfortunately, I need an editor now, not before. Hold on one second. I'm coming back.
Yeah.
I think I need to let my dog out before he pisses all over the floor. But anyway, the idea of doing the book was there, and Ender is the one who said you should maybe do a book based on your Beatles and Kiss stuff and things like that, but do your life story, but also include a CD with it, your unreleased material from the Kiss days, and maybe even some Beatles songs. So my wife and I ran into Gene Simmons in Santa Monica at a car dealership that we were walking by. And I actually saw his head go by with the ponytail out of the back of the hat. I go, look, honey, it's Gene. We walk across the street. Gene is telling very bad jokes to all the mechanics and stuff in there. He's there with picking up a Range Rover or something, whatever whatever the Dodge or Ford version is of a SUV. And I'll never forget, he comes in, there's a black mechanic, he looks at me, hey, Mitch, great, good to see you. Hey, look, it's Eddie Kendricks. So it was not Eddie, just a black guy. But everybody's rolling on the floor laughing. But we're walking down the street, he comes out, he says hi to the dog, says hi to my wife. And I told him the idea about the book. And, oh my God, you know what? You heard it here first. The dog is going to do whatever dogs do when you don't let them out.
Sorry.
There's nothing I can do. I could leave a big hole here and let him outside, but then I'd have to go get him again. So Gene says to me, you don't want to do books. Books are dead. So the only book I'm going to do now is if Jesus comes to me and says, hey, I got a story for you. But other than that, because I thought of him as a publisher, but he says, no, not do books. And it could do something with that. Sophie's book didn't do well, and Shannon's book didn't do what it should have, and maybe it was tougher. But the other thing I said, the other idea I have is doing a CD, the songwriter version of the song. He says, I'm interested in. When you have that lined up and have the ideas solidified, contact me.
Cool.
So I'm thinking about it since this happened. And actually the boys in Buffalo had actually pitched the same sort of idea. They even had a list of the songs. My idea was to have, if I did Beatles songs, I wanted to do Got Kitchen in My Life, and the Buddy Rich Orchestra wants to be involved. Kathy Rich, they want to be the band on that song.
Awesome.
So there's a number of different ways to go here. If I do the Kiss material, I don't want it recorded as Kiss, but as me doing those songs, and you'll definitely know what it came from, because I'm not going to get that. When I wrote them, it was for them. My whole thing is I've been trying to figure out who am I my whole life, because I'm good at ghostwriting. I'm good at putting myself in other people's shoes, not just because of the McCartney thing. And that wasn't writing any songs, that was just singing them. But I'm able to do a lot of variety of stuff and write stuff in a variety of styles. I even did hip hop hip hop for a Milos Forman film that never quite made it in there. But I mean, I've done a variety of things, and the chameleon part may have been just something I'm able to do, or it may have been something that just makes it easier for me not to figure out who I am. But
Cool.
I think I have some ideas. Yeah.
So let's. How did the whole Buffalo Rock City thing come about? Let's get
Well,
to that Dean in
as
here.
we start,
And then Mitch,
yeah.
we'll open it up to some questions because I've really been neglecting the chat here, and we got a bunch
All right.
of.
Well, in that case, take a pause. Talk to the chat people. I
All
really
right,
should let my dog out. Right.
Yeah, you better let your dog. All right. So I hope everybody's enjoying this. This is incredible. We're getting a lot of behind the scenes information here about the Kiss, the whole Beatlemania thing. Hack can play us. No, you don't want to hear me play. I mean, in the presence of a guy like Mitch Weissman, the hack will definitely be exposed. You don't want to hear me play. But we'll talk about the Buffalo Rock City thing. Actually, Sandra, if you wouldn't mind, can you pull up the Buffalo Rock City link and maybe throw it into the chat? Again, I totally blanked on that, but if you throw that link into the chat, I'd much appreciate that. The Buffalo Rock City CD, I believe, what's today? The 16th? I think it comes out. It came out
yesterday. It came out yesterday, and the digital downloads, I believe, have been available for at least 2 days.
Okay.
You can actually preview the tracks at Bandcamp.
Right.
Because you can't download that stuff, but you can listen to the tracks on Bandcamp. So thanks for filling in the hole there. Keep going.
Worries. Thanks, Sandra. Sandra's going to throw up the link for the CD, so that's very cool. Yeah. So how did those guys? How did that come about? They reached out to you, or like? Yeah,
John Jeffrey. And again, I'm terrible with the. I should have printed out the credits, but I don't have a printer here at my house. John Jeffrey is the guy who came up with this idea. They were as you said on your show. I saw it when I watched it. When he has his band Kiss This in the Buffalo area, and a very big tribute band along with Do Driver. They all knew each other in those days. This idea had come up a few years ago with them to maybe do a Kiss tribute record in a really different vein, where the tracks to this are uniform. Try to get some guest stars on it. The first track that we all have seen since the album was done was Robbie Takak. I don't remember how to pronounce Robbie's last name. I am friends with John, by the way, from my Sam Ash days, and I've seen him in a long time. But his version of Hard Luck Woman is really, really good. The band did a great job on that song. So John Jeffrey actually was telling me about this before that was even done. John, you'll have to correct this if I'm wrong, but I believe it was in 2019, definitely 2019, early, maybe even in the summertime, telling me about this project. Back then, I was still moving around from place to place. I had moved down to Southern California to start work with a different company, making a quality product, but I'm not about to mention the company's name, just because of my own personal feelings towards them at this point. But he reached out to me, and I was living in a motel at the time, trying to find a place to live in Southern California when I got let go from that company. So it wasn't the right time to do anything. Eventually, in the fall, I moved up here to Washington, and then COVID hit. And it was hard up here to try to find a studio to record in, because it all kind of stopped. Friends of mine who had recording gear that could have handled the thing, had their own studios at home, were letting people into their homes record stuff. Yeah. So it couldn't be done. And literally at the last minute, while they're finishing up this album, John and I talked again, because I actually mentioned it on another show, my friend Coffee Talk with the Dika Live, let the cat out of the bag that we were thinking of doing this, and me on this record. The album was well into its production, and a little advanced promo there. And then John and I brainstormed. I couldn't get my stuff together to find a recording studio up here, and he literally asked where I was, and he found the studio within an hour, and he actually fronted the bill for that, and it didn't take long. I think I used less than 2 hours worth of time. Small World Department is the guy who owns that studio. Is actually friends with my friend Jeff Cowden up here in Bellingham, whose place I'm renting from. and he used to know him from recording with his band, Buckwheat Elvis, in the '90s, which was a big regional band up in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
So I ended up going into the studio adjacent to a farmhouse and a barn and stuff like that, where he does live recording. This engineer there, and we knocked out the vocals in pretty quick time, and I was very happy with them. And that's how it made it onto the album in time. And John Jeffrey's persistence and everybody else's work, Gene Schmidt's work on this album, everybody's playing. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to have to do a separate show where I thank everybody hand in hand. I can't wait to hear the rest of the tracks. Dean Castronovo, I've known Dean since Black Sabbath days. I can't remember, or definitely the John Waite days, or telling stories about John, and then Bad English and stuff like that. So I can't wait to hear the rest of this record myself, but I was very happy with my track. So people seem to like it, so I'm happy with that. And it's for a very good cause.
Yes.
Absolutely. Mention that house again. I can't remember.
Okay, so the link went up. BuffaloRockCityBandcamp.com/releases. That's the one site, and there is also a website where you can purchase the I was going to say purchase the vinyl, but purchase the CD as well. But if you Google Buffalo Rock City, you will find it. It's very easy to find. When I had those guys on, I was saying to you off air, they sent me 3 tracks. And again, if you're a Kiss fan, it'll blow you away. I mean, not only did these guys play the songs to perfection, but man, they absolutely nailed all the guitar tones. So that's the crazy part of it. Oh,
I knocked my phone over.
Knocked your phone.
And he's back. Yeah, I was trying to let the dog off the clip, but hang on, I'm getting there.
No worries.
Are we back? Are we back now? Somewhere?
Yeah, we're back. We're good.
Good.
So
I went diving. Yeah, that's right.
It's all right. Yeah, these guys knocked it out of the park. So as soon as this is over, I'm gonna look up the site and I'm gonna order myself one of these CDs, because as a Kiss fan, it's a must-have. It absolutely is. I mean, it's a great cause, but it's also a great CD. So
yeah. I can't wait to download mine.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's open up the floor. I've been neglecting the chat because I've been so caught up in Mitch's story. So just going to keep an eye out. If anyone's got questions or questions you had previous, I promise you now I am looking at the chat. Ask away. Any questions you may have for Mitch, and I'll be watching the chat. Hey, Guitar Hack, there's a question. Ask Mitch if he was offered a full-time gig in the Beatles or Kiss, which one would he choose and why?
Wow.
So if you were offered,
if somebody said, do you want to be in the Beatles or do you want to be in Kiss? Wow, that's a hard question to say, because of what we already know about them now. I mean, I don't know if I could presume to have ever been in the Beatles without thinking about them being the Beatles at the time. I mean, I think if I were that around in those days and John Lennon and George Harrison wanted to form a band, I probably would say yes. At the same time, being in Kiss would be a lot of fun, because I do love playing that style of music. My wife is not a fan, but at the same time, I like playing heavier style music. It also satisfies my soul. But I don't think I could replace the Demon. I don't think I could ever. I don't think I could ever be that character. I could probably play bass in a band like that and sing, but I don't know. That's a very good question. I don't know. Dare I say it? Kiss might be leading in that direction. I'm not sure.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So along the same lines, CK is asking, did you enjoy your time working with Gene?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed my time working with Paul also. I enjoyed working with the band. I mean, in the process, I enjoyed there wasn't a difference between them being friends and them working in the business. In other words, the point is, and that might have been due to our relationship. I've always been one of those sort of guys that can be you're working with the guys. You're working with them. You're friends with them. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes time to a work relationship, if it comes time for them to be Kiss and I'm Mitch, the friend, and have to step back just because they're going through those stage roads doesn't mean you follow them. Just because
Right.
you work, like I said, I guess it had to do with my friendship with them influenced the way we work together as well. Because when we started to do stuff to work together and it didn't work out, I still stayed as the friend. I'm able to separate church and state, as it were.
Yeah.
And not be. I'll never forget. I used to go to the shows before the big resurgence. I mean, the Garden shows. It was huge, and we went as their guests. But I went to see some shows and other things. And then when the stuff came off at the Mask and they started to having all the people who needed to go to their shows, it's funny. You're cold for a while, but now all of a sudden you're huge, and everybody needs to see your show. And I'd say to Gene, "So do I get tickets from Madison Square Garden?" He says, "I can't. There's so many people that have to come to these shows." He didn't use these words, but I would. You have the record company needs to bring people, and this person has to come, and you have the glad handing, and you're smiling, and this guy's sister and brother and their kids have to come, and all this stuff, and there's no room. So if you want to buy a ticket, but you can't come backstage, it's already packed up. I said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "But if you want to go to New Haven, I got plenty of room in New Haven." I said, "Okay,
Yeah,
I'll make a
man.
deal. I'll make a deal with you. I'll
More
take the train to New Haven if you take me back in the car." And that's what we did that. So,
That's cool.
so you were able to, just because you're friends, I was able to separate things if it didn't work out. I'll never forget there was a time when I needed some work, and they're doing a live broadcast. Lou Gramm had just come back into Foreigner after the Johnny Edwards bicycle pants days, and they're doing a live broadcast from Electric Lady, and what do you call it? Mick Jones and I were friends at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And he needed a roadie. He needed somebody that I'll do it. He said, "I can't." He says, "I can't do it. It's too weird for me. It's too weird. I mean, we're friends." And then all of a sudden to have to become your boss, I don't think I can do that. They couldn't live with it. It's a nice compliment. But at the same time, I said, "That's great," except that now I don't have a job. We just laughed we just laughed at it. We got to the point, but I got his point. A lot of people, it's very hard to be somebody's
awkward.
boss and friend at the same time, because 9 times out of 10, the friend gets offended, and there goes that.
And it ruins it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sandra's got a question. Who do you want to collaborate with next? Or do you want to collaborate? Is that something that interests you?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought of anybody now, because basically my situation now is although as it's turning out, we're all finding out that StreamYard, Zoom, all these ways are a great way to collaborate with people.
Mm-hmm.
I can now see doing writing sessions face-to-face with people that way. There's a guy named D.L. Byron. D.L. Byron is a great singer-songwriter from New York. And even Ricky Byrd from Joan Jett. We used to collaborate by calling each other's answering machines and leaving the messages on them.
Yeah.
And then picking up the pieces and calling back and leaving the next process and the idea if we couldn't speak to each other on the phone. "Okay, you're at home, you're not home here. How about this?" And you sing a song, stuff like that. I think Ricky and I have one of the best lyric lines that I never finished that. And I can't remember it now. I was about to sing it for you. "You ain't got nothing, but I want half. If that's too much, well, that's too bad." He just sang it to my phone one day, and I said, "Great!" And I think actually he sang the first half. "You ain't got nothing, but I want half," and I sang the other half back to him. But to collaborate now, that's a very interesting question. I started thinking. I hadn't thinking of doing music. Right now, I'm on hold in Bellingham, Washington. I'm working in the food service industry. I'm trying to get myself back into the writing head. My wife and I are hunkered down here until things kind of settle and open up. I was happily looking for a place to live in Los Angeles, but I'm glad it didn't happen because the Sam Ash connection died. The COVID hit, and it's very expensive in California.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean, and not to say I don't like Bellingham. I love it, but that's not where I am prepared to stay at the moment. But if I can write and collaborate with different people, collaboration wise, back when I was doing the Kiss stuff, Gene gave me Rick Nielsen's phone number. I used to see Rick and Robin and the guys when they'd come to New York and play shows. We'd be friends. And I had a band with Joel Danzig, who was the creative director and guitar designer for Hamer Guitars back then. We used to open for Cheap Trick. And I remember Gene saying, you're making some money now. Why don't you just fly to Rick's house and write with him? I called Rick. He said, yeah, come on over. I never did. I don't know why. Probably because it was like the same reaction. Holy shit, it's Rick Nielsen. I'm going to go to his house and write with him. I can't do that. But when I went back to working in graphic design because I didn't want to spend all my money, and before the royalties came in for Animalize, I went back to my old graphic design studio, and I'm working in the bullpen, and the phone would ring on the wall, and the kids would run for the phone to answer it and go, Mitch, John Waite's on the phone. Mitch, Paul Stanley's on the phone. Mitch, Gene Simmons is on the phone. Mitch, Mick Jones is on the phone. I had to make a living. I mean, I had money. I could have just, and it was cheap in the early 80s. I could have just, or late 80s, I could have lived off the royalties, and I'd been living there for years, so my rent wasn't that expensive and stuff like that. But no, I wanted to work. I have a work ethic, and I was in graphics. I almost became a full-fledged graphic designer, but music kept calling me away. So, yeah. So I don't know. I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent here, but collaborative-wise, DL Byron. So DL and I were friends. I mean, to talk about the answering machine stuff, he and I wrote together, and I sang on a demo of his for Bonnie Parker. She was a Long Island sensation, great singing bass player, still is. She's fantastic. Did a song called Little Darling. D.L. Byron's claim to fame is he wrote Shadows of the Night for Pat Benatar. And still sees money to this day. He's a great songwriter, great book writer, and a collaborator. Back then, we tried a few things, didn't happen. I've been speaking with him recently. Maybe it's time to try that again. Dust off the old ideas, see what we can do. I've actually been referred to by friends in Hollywood. I have a certain friend of mine, Ken Goldstein in Hollywood, as the song doctor, because like I said, it goes back to me helping somebody flesh out their idea, fixing songs, coming up with the lines that you're missing, turning a baby producer. It's turning, put this part here, put this part there, try this. I mean, song arranger, song doctor. I mean, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I have those skills, so I'm open. Anybody who wants to write with me, you can reach me through this show or find me on Facebook, and I'd be happy to listen to anybody else.
Yeah, well, I've got your Facebook below, so they can message you.
Yeah.
Here's another question for you. Has Mitch done any other Broadway musicals?
No, I did not. After the show was over on Broadway, and I'd saved a lot of money and stuff like that, I started to audition for Broadway shows. I didn't get past any auditions, and I can't remember the plays I was auditioning for or the musicals I was auditioning for. I used to do Harry Nielsen's, or actually Badfinger's, If Living Is Without You, for my audition takes. My vocal range was that used to be very impressive to people for me to come in and sing, can't live if living is out, sort of in the original keys. That's pretty stratospheric stuff. And there's a track of mine, which I probably would redo. It's a track of mine and Eric's called The Troubles Inside You. It came out on that album that was put together with his unreleased tracks and stuff years ago, in the 90s. And I'm singing a song called The Troubles Inside You, which was a demo. It's just sitting on a cassette in Gene's closet called, Eric's Ideas. And you'll have to hold it here, folks. Find more questions because my dog just ran out the door. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. We'll ask, Ian's got a question, and I don't want to. Okay, Ian's got a question, and Charlie. Those will be the next two, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up. I don't want to take any more of Mitch's time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show. Thank you all so much for being here. I will ask these last two questions. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. All right, we got...
And we're back. Okay.
Well, we'll ask you, I've got a couple more for you, and then I don't want to take up too much of your time. Mitch, here's a question from Ian. Are there any songs you wish you'd written?
Wow. I don't know if I have ever said that to myself, and there certainly are a lot of songs out there you wish you had written. That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, you could think of the usual ones, like I wish I'd written yesterday. I wish I'd written whatever. I mean, any number of Beatles songs, any number of anything else. I mean, I think I want to know what Love is. A great song.
Oh,
yeah. So did Paul Stanley, because he wrote Everybody's Got a Reason to Live also. I used to joke with him that song sounds like something I've heard before. And I said it to Gene, and he said to me, "I'm not going to tell him. You're not going to tell him. Who's going to tell him? I'm not telling him." It's like when I met Tony Franklin from the Firm in New York, and Paul Rogers. They'd done Radioactive with Jimmy Page, and they were in New York.
Right.
Paul Rogers at the China Club, and Elliot Randall, the guitar player, got the backing band to launch into All Right Now. And Paul ended up going on stage. He looks at himself and goes like, I don't know if I remember the lyrics of the song. I haven't sang it in like 20 years. But afterwards, I'm talking to Tony and to, I forgot the drummer's name, great drummer. And I said to him, how come nobody told Paul Rogers that he was singing off key on all those Firm words? He said to him, he's a 3rd degree black belt. Who's going to tell him? But it's a lot of, I mean, Paul saying, now I've been listening to actually a Reason to Live a lot lately, and it's a killer song. So it doesn't really sound like it. What do you call it? The Foreigner song. Yeah, but there's a lot of great songs out there. I mean, I wish I'd written it. I never even got presumptive enough to think that in my mind's eye. I just liked them for the songs they were. And I've never had a moment of going, damn, I wish I'd written that. But the only thing I think I mentioned before is I wish that song had been on the radio. Because I think I would have had more money and maybe not ended up in the position I'm in. Not that money had anything to do with it. So it's pretty funny. Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap up with this. This is a question from Charlie Launder. Mitch, who are some of your favorite bass players?
Oh, my favorite bass players? Well, I obviously loved Paul McCartney. I actually think Gene Simmons is an amazing bass player and very underrated. Listen to Sure Knows Something. Listen to a lot of that stuff. I've been watching a lot of videos lately. Bruce actually has turned me on to looking at different shows and things like that. Kulick. And his playing is actually so underrated, it's ridiculous. John Paul Jones, obviously John Entwistle. What's his name? My God, I'm losing my brain. Yes. Who's the bass player? And yes, Chris Squire. Chris Squire, who I knew actually at a NAMM show years ago. He tried to get me an endorsement with a string company, and they were talking to me and very nice when he was there. As soon as he walked away, they stopped talking to me. So, he tried to. I actually played. There's a funny story. I played at Chris Squire's wedding to his first wife in Santa Barbara in the 90s, or 1990. I said, wow. Talk about surreal. I'm playing his wedding. We're playing above the hot tub that they put a platform over. The members of Yes are there, including Tony Kaye, who got roped into playing the DX7, the wedding march, as they came down the aisle. And he's going all the while, I'll get you for this. I'll get you for this. We're at the bride's house in Santa Barbara. We're playing this show for all the Yes members, except for John Anderson, who didn't come to the wedding. There must have been some sort of rift at the time. I don't know what it was. But all the other members are there. Trevor Rabin, along with the original guitar player. The girl he's marrying is on a big CBS soap opera at the time, and I had to call my estranged wife in New York to say, "You're never going to believe whose house I'm at." It was surreal, and Chris was a great guy, a really, really great, nice guy, very nice to me and stuff like that. So, but bass player wise, him, I'm leaving off a list because I'd have to. It's one of those questions I wish I had in advance so I could make a list of bass players.
Well, the ones you named off the top of your head are pretty impressive already.
Yeah, I mean, Sting plays great bass. Forget about his personality. I mean, I love the guy, but I mean, I'll think of them as soon as we stop talking. So you go.
Yeah, well, somebody mentioned Geddy Lee, so yeah.
Yes, yeah, Geddy Lee was actually great. I couldn't get past his voice, but since they did the coverage record, and since poor Alex Lifeson, no, not Alex Lifeson, what do you call it? Neil Peart passed away. I've been listening and watching more videos. I mean, Geddy Lee did the most phenomenal job at the Yes induction at the Grammys. It was unbelievable. Geddy is an amazing, amazing instrumentalist, let
he's a
alone
great
bass player.
musician. Yeah, they're all phenomenal.
Yeah.
All right. Any last things you want to mention, Mitch, before we wrap this up to the
Well, I think first of all, thanks so much for having me on. It's really great. It's no, I wish I'm going to look back at this and read the questions afterwards on the live chat rerun. But I think I want everybody to be safe out there. 2021 should be a better year. It's been great talking to all of you and seeing you. And feel free to visit me on the Facebook page. If you want to email me, weissongs@aol.com. You feel free to publish that if you want to also. So guys, I just wish you all a happy and a healthy new year. I may break down and watch Kiss in Dubai. But my wife will then shoot me in the head. So that's not going to happen. I'll have to figure out how to watch it later. All of you have a great, happy, healthy new year. And as I said, and stay safe out there. Okay, everybody? Thanks a lot.
Okay, hang tight for a minute, Mitch. So I want to thank everybody for checking out the show. You guys absolutely rock. If you would like to help support the Guitar Hack channel, links are below. Get yourselves a t-shirt, a mug, a hoodie, all that good stuff. There's also a PayPal there as well. If you're not on my Facebook page, those links are below. There's a Guitar Hack group. There's my email if you need to reach me. So I want to thank Mitch for being on the show. This was one of my favorite shows of all time. And I've been doing this for a couple years. Absolutely fantastic.
It was my pleasure, and I'm honored to be here. And again, everybody, to finish what he's saying, don't forget about the Buffalo Rock City tribute album.
Thank you.
This tribute album, and all the proceeds that will go towards a great charitable cause in Buffalo.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
And we will see you next week for a very special Christmas show. So stay tuned next week, 8 o'clock. All right. We'll see you then. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.